The coffee maker's gurgle was the only sound in our kitchen at 2:47 a.m. when I found Celeste's second phone buzzing like an angry wasp in the laundry basket. My wife of 18 years was supposedly at a corporate communications conference in Boston, extending her stay because of networking opportunities. The phone's screen lit up with a message that made my blood freeze. Can't wait to taste you again. Tomorrow night. Room 412. D. I'm Oliver Harlan, 42 years old, and until 3 minutes ago I thought I knew my life. I used to run IT consulting for mid-sized companies until I burned out and started doing home renovations. Celeste always said I was too trusting, too naive for the corporate world. Turns out she was right about one thing. I was definitely too trusting. The phone buzzed again. Another message from D. Tell your husband you're staying through Friday. We have the penthouse suite. My hands shook as I scrolled through the message history. Months of explicit texts, photos that made me want to vomit, and detailed plans for their secret meetings. The most recent photo was time-stamped last Tuesday, the night Celeste claimed she was working late on the Henderson account. I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together. The granite countertops I'd installed myself. The family photos on the refrigerator. The coffee mugs Celeste brought back from business trips that were apparently just cover stories for her affair. A tap on the kitchen window made me jump. Marcia Peterson, our nosy neighbor, was peering through the glass in her bathrobe. Everything okay, Oliver? Saw the lights on. Expecting someone? I opened the window. Just couldn't sleep, Marcia. Celeste is at a conference. Oh, that's right. Though I could have sworn I saw her getting into a silver Tesla yesterday afternoon. Wasn't her usual car. Marcia's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone who'd just delivered premium gossip. A Tesla. I scrolled back through Celeste's hidden messages and found what I was looking for. D had mentioned his new Tesla several times, bragging about the autopilot feature and how it gave them more time for fun during drives. Thanks, Marcia. I should get some sleep. But sleep was impossible. I went to my home office and fired up my laptop. 18 years in IT consulting had taught me a few things about digital security, and Celeste had never been particularly careful with her passwords. She used variations of our daughter Maddie's birthday for everything. Her laptop connected to our home network, and within 20 minutes, I had access to her cloud storage. What I found there destroyed whatever remained of my marriage. A folder labeled Business Expenses contained hotel receipts, restaurant bills for two, and spa weekend bookings, all during times when Celeste claimed to be working late or attending conferences. But the worst discovery was a video file dated 3 weeks ago. I clicked play and watched my wife of 18 years with a man I recognized from her company's website, Damian Voss, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. They were in a hotel room, and Celeste was saying things to him that she hadn't said to me in years. I closed the laptop and walked to our bedroom. Our wedding photo stared at me from the nightstand, Celeste in her white dress, radiant and laughing. Me in my rented tux, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. That man was an idiot. I pulled out my phone and texted Pete Morrison, who owned the local dive bar where I occasionally drowned my sorrows after particularly difficult renovation projects. You up for a drink? About to blow up my life. His response came immediately. Bar's closed, but I'm here doing inventory. Come on over. Bring whatever evidence you've got. As I grabbed my jacket, I made a decision. Celeste wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that her boring, naive husband had picked up a few tricks during his years in the corporate world. And unlike her, I actually knew how to use them. The rain started as I drove toward Pete's bar, matching my mood perfectly. By the time I parked, I had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't noble, and it definitely wasn't forgiving, but it was going to be thorough. Pete's Tavern sat on the edge of downtown like a comfortable old shoe, worn, reliable, and unpretentious. I found Pete behind the bar, counting bottles of whiskey and muttering about his suppliers. At 55, Pete Morrison looked like Central Casting's idea of a small-town bartender, graying beard, flannel shirt, and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd heard every sob story ever invented. "Jesus, Ollie, you look like someone ran over your dog." Pete poured 2 glasses of bourbon without asking. "What's the damage?" I showed him the messages on Celeste's phone. Pete's expression darkened as he read. "Damien Voss," he said, setting down his glass hard enough to rattle the bar. "Yeah, I know that prick. He's been in here a few times, throwing money around, acting like he owns the place, always with different women. Had your wife in here about a month ago, actually?" My stomach lurched. "What?" "Yeah, they were in the corner booth all over each other. I figured you two were having problems and it wasn't my business. Shit, Ollie, I'm sorry. I should have said something." "It's not your fault." I drained my bourbon. "But I need your help with something." Pete refilled both glasses. "Name it." I explained my plan. Pete listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's either brilliant or completely insane," he said finally. "Probably both. You sure you want to go this route?" Divorce lawyers exist for a reason. Divorce lawyers split assets 50-50 and take 3 years to do it. I want something more immediate, more educational. Pete grinned. "All right then, count me in. But we do this smart, no criminal charges, nothing that comes back to bite us legally." I drove home as dawn broke over our suburban neighborhood. Celeste wasn't due back until Friday, which gave me 3 days to prepare. I parked in our garage and walked through our house with new eyes. 18 years of marriage, and I was seeing it all as evidence now. The first thing I did was change all the passwords on our joint accounts and transfer half of our savings to an account Celeste didn't know about. Then I called our lawyer, not for divorce papers, not yet, but to understand exactly what I could and couldn't do legally. By noon, I had a clear picture. Connecticut was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still mattered for asset division and alimony. The evidence I'd found would be devastating in court, but I wanted something more satisfying than a legal victory. I wanted Damien Voss to understand what happened when you messed with someone's family. My phone rang. Celeste's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, honey," I said, keeping my voice normal. "How's the conference?" "Oh, boring presentations and terrible hotel coffee. I'm thinking of extending through the weekend. There's a networking event that could be really valuable for my career." "That's great, sweetheart. You work so hard. You deserve some relaxation time." There was a pause. Celeste wasn't used to me being so understanding about her work trips. "Are you feeling okay, Oliver? You sound different." "Just tired. Been working on the Henderson kitchen renovation. You know how those projects drain me." "Right. Well, I should go. Another session starting soon." "Have fun, honey. Give my regards to everyone." After she hung up, I sat in my home office and opened her laptop again. This time, I was looking for Damien's information. Home address, car registration, credit reports, everything I could legally access through the databases I still had connections to from my consulting days. Damien Voss lived in Riverside Commons, an upscale apartment complex with a gated entrance and concierge service. He drove a silver Tesla Model S, license plate VOSS1. His credit report showed he was leveraged to the hilt, expensive car payments, luxury apartment rent, and credit card balances that suggested he was living beyond his means despite his executive salary. Interesting. I spent the afternoon gathering intelligence. Damien's social media profiles painted a picture of a man obsessed with his image. Photos of expensive dinners, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, gym selfies showing off his personal trainer's work. He tagged locations constantly, making it easy to track his patterns. According to his Instagram, he was currently at the Marriott downtown with the most amazing woman in the world. The photo showed 2 champagne glasses and a room service menu. No faces, but I recognized Celeste's wedding ring on the hand holding one of the glasses. My wife was wearing her wedding ring while cheating on me. The symbolism was almost too perfect. That evening, I drove to the Marriott and found Damien's Tesla in the parking garage. It was pristine, detailed to showroom condition, parked across 2 spaces to avoid door dings. The vanity plate caught the fluorescent light like a neon sign. I walked around the car slowly, admiring the paint job and the custom rims. Then I took out my keys. The word cheater carved into the driver's side door with surgical precision. 4 flat tires, deflated with a small tool I'd borrowed from my contractor supplies. And finally, a used condom, purchased from a gas station restroom vending machine, placed carefully on the hood. I took photos of my handiwork and sent them to the number I'd found in Celeste's phone. Nice ride. Shame about the karma. A concerned citizen. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Unknown number. Who the hell is this? Damien's voice was shaking with rage. Someone who doesn't appreciate homewreckers, I said calmly. Consider this a friendly warning. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be fascinated by the evidence I have about your extracurricular activities, especially the videos. The line went dead. I drove home and poured myself a glass of the good scotch, the bottle Celeste and I had been saving for our 20th anniversary. It tasted like victory. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Someone vandalized Damien's car. Do you know anything about this? I typed back, Who's Damien? And why would you think I'd know about some stranger's car problems? No response. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. Tomorrow, phase 2 would begin. Wednesday morning brought rain and a phone call that changed everything. I was in my workshop sharpening chisels and planning my next move when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Celeste's office number. Oliver Harlan speaking. Mr. Harlan, this is Jennifer Walsh from Human Resources at Pinnacle Communications. I'm trying to reach Celeste about some scheduling conflicts with the Boston conference. Is she available? I set down my chisel carefully. I'm sorry, what scheduling conflicts? Well, according to our records, there is no Boston conference this week. Celeste requested time off for personal reasons, but she told her assistant she was attending a company event. I'm trying to sort out the confusion. I see. Celeste told me she was at a company conference. Perhaps you should speak with her directly when she returns. Of course. Thank you for your time. After Jennifer hung up, I sat in my workshop and laughed until my sides hurt. Celeste hadn't even bothered to create a convincing cover story. She'd simply lied to everyone, her office, her assistant, and me, and assumed no one would compare notes. It was time to help them compare notes. I called Pinnacle Communications and asked to speak with Damien Voss. His assistant, a young woman named Rebecca, told me he was out of the office until Friday. Oh, that's right, I said. He mentioned he'd be at the Boston conference with Celeste Harlan. They're working on that big project together. There was a pause. I'm sorry, sir, but there's no Boston conference this week, and Mr. Voss requested personal time off. May I ask who's calling? This is Oliver Harlan, Celeste's husband. I must have misunderstood. Thank you. I hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh back. Ms. Walsh, this is Oliver Harlan again. I just spoke with Damien Voss's assistant and there seems to be some confusion. Rebecca mentioned that Mr. Voss also requested personal time off this week, and she seemed surprised when I mentioned the Boston conference. I'm concerned there might be some kind of coordination issue between my wife and her supervisor. The silence on the other end stretched long enough for me to count to 10. Mr. Harlan, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll look into the matter. I appreciate your discretion, Ms. Walsh. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, but we both knew there wasn't. I spent the rest of the morning researching Pinnacle Communications' employee handbook online. Like most companies, they had strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. They also had policies about falsifying time-off requests and misrepresenting company business. Celeste and Damien had violated at least 3 different company policies, and now HR knew about it. Phase 2 was ahead of schedule. That afternoon, I drove to the construction site where I was renovating a kitchen for the Hendersons. The work was therapeutic, tearing out old cabinets, ripping up flooring, demolishing walls. Physical labor that matched my emotional state. I was loading debris into my truck when a silver Tesla pulled into the driveway. The driver's side door was freshly repainted, but I could still see faint scratches where my key had done its work. Damien Voss climbed out of the car, and I got my first good look at Celeste's lover. He was about my height but broader through the shoulders, with the kind of artificially perfect appearance that suggested expensive grooming and regular gym sessions. His suit probably cost more than I made in a month on renovation projects. "You must be Oliver," he said, walking toward me with the confident stride of a man used to intimidating people. "And you must be the guy who's been screwing my wife." I didn't stop loading debris. Nice paint job on the door. Almost can't see where someone carved cheater into it. Damien's jaw tightened. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "This situation has gotten out of hand. Celeste and we never meant for things to go this far. But what you did to my car was criminal vandalism. I could press charges." I straightened up and looked at him directly. "You could try. Of course, I'd have to share those videos with your wife during the legal proceedings." "What was her name again?" "Sarah? The one whose Instagram shows her visiting her mother in Florida this week while you're supposedly at a business conference?" Damien's face went pale. "How do you—" "I used to run IT consulting, remember? I know how to find information. I also know Sarah Voss inherited a substantial trust fund from her grandfather, and according to Connecticut law, adultery affects asset division in divorce proceedings. But I'm sure you already knew that. What do you want?" I tossed a piece of broken drywall into the truck. "I want you to understand something very clearly. You picked the wrong family to mess with. I'm not some suburban pushover who's going to quietly accept being cuckolded. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of his apartment building's visitor log. "Celeste has been signing in as your business associate for the past 3 months. I wonder what your building management thinks about residents using company relationships to circumvent guest policies." Damien stepped closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. "Listen, you small-time contractor piece of shit." I dropped the debris I was holding and stepped toward him. 18 years of marriage to an ambitious woman had taught me how to handle entitled bullies, and 42 years of life had taught me that most men who relied on intimidation folded when someone stood up to them. "Finish that sentence," I said quietly. "Please." Damien looked at me for a long moment, then stepped back. "This isn't over." "You're right. It's not." I pulled out a small digital recorder and hit stop. "Thanks for the confession, by the way. Celeste and I never meant for things to go this far should sound great in divorce court." He got back in his Tesla and drove away, but not before I took a photo of his license plate with my phone's timestamp clearly visible. That evening, I called Pete and told him about my confrontation with Damien. "Guy sounds like a real winner," Pete said. "What's your next move?" "I'm going to destroy them both, piece by piece, until they understand what it costs to betray someone who trusted them." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" I smiled, even though Pete couldn't see it. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, each other, with nowhere else to go." Thursday evening found me sitting in my home office, surrounded by printed emails, bank statements, and a detailed timeline of Celeste and Damien's affair. I'd spent the day making phone calls and connecting dots, and the picture that emerged was even worse than I'd initially thought. Celeste hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been systematically lying to everyone in her life. Her best friend Kendra thought Celeste was working late on important projects. Her sister believed Celeste was attending professional development seminars. Even our daughter Maddie had been told her mother was traveling for work. But the most interesting discovery came from my conversation with Tom Bradley, who managed the apartment complex where Damien lived. Tom and I had worked together on a renovation project 2 years ago, and he owed me a favor. "Your wife's been signing in as a business associate?" Tom confirmed. "But here's the thing. Residents aren't supposed to have regular overnight guests without declaring them on their lease. Voss has been violating his rental agreement for months." "What's the penalty for that?" "Depends on how many violations. Multiple infractions could void his lease entirely." I thanked Tom and made a note in my file. Then I called Jennifer Walsh at Pinnacle Communications. "Ms. Walsh, this is Oliver Harlan. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. Have you had a chance to look into the scheduling confusion?" "Mr. Harlan, I appreciate your concern, but I can't discuss personnel matters with—" "Of course not. I just wanted to let you know that if there are any questions about timeline or documentation, I have records of my wife's travel arrangements. Hotel bookings, restaurant receipts, that sort of thing. I'd be happy to share them if it would help clarify the situation." Another long pause. "That's very helpful, Mr. Harlan. I'll keep that in mind. I'm sure you'll handle everything appropriately. Pinnacle has such a good reputation for maintaining professional standards. By Friday afternoon, I was ready for Celeste's return. I'd packed her belongings into suitcases and boxes, changed the locks on our house, and prepared a folder of evidence that would make our divorce proceedings very straightforward. But first, I had one more surprise planned. Pete's Tavern was busier than usual for a Friday night. Word had gotten around that something interesting was going to happen, though I'd been careful not to reveal too many details. Marcia Peterson sat at the bar, nursing a wine spritzer and practically vibrating with anticipation. Tom Bradley had stopped by after work, along with several other contractors and neighbors who knew both Celeste and me. At 7 o'clock, Celeste walked through the door. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her business attire expensive and well-fitted. She'd always known how to make an entrance, and tonight was no exception. "Oliver?" She spotted me at the bar and walked over, confusion evident on her face. "What are you doing here?" "I thought you'd be home." "I thought we should talk somewhere neutral," I said. "How was the conference?" "It was productive. Very productive." She glanced around the bar, noting the unusual crowd. "Why is everyone staring at us?" "Probably because they're curious about your presentation." "My presentation?" I pulled out my laptop and set it on the bar. "The one you've been giving all week. Want to see the highlights?" Before she could respond, I clicked play on the video I'd found in her cloud storage. The sound was muted, but the image was crystal clear. Celeste and Damien in their hotel room, engaged in activities that definitely weren't covered in any business conference. The bar went completely silent. Celeste's face went white, then red, then white again. "Oliver, please, let me explain." "No need. The video explains everything." I closed the laptop. "By the way, Damien should be joining us soon." "I texted him from your phone, told him you wanted to meet here to discuss your relationship status." "You did what?" As if on cue, Damien walked through the door. He saw Celeste first, then noticed me, then registered the crowd of people staring at them both. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding to panic in the span of about 3 seconds. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, striding toward us. "This is what accountability looks like," I said calmly. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Damien Voss. He's been helping my wife with some very special projects. Pete, bless him, chose that moment to turn up the volume on the bar's sound system. The audio from the hotel video filled the room. Celeste's voice, unmistakably, saying things that made several people gasp. "Turn that off!" Celeste lunged for my laptop, but I closed it before she could reach it. "Too late, sweetheart." "Everyone's already seen enough." Damien grabbed my arm. "You son of a bitch, you planned this." I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. "I'd suggest you let go of me. Right now. Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he released my arm and stepped back. "This is harassment," Celeste said, her voice shaking. "I could sue you for this." "For showing people a video you made?" "Good luck with that legal strategy." I stood up and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the entertainment tonight, but I thought you should know that my wife of 18 years has been lying to all of us. She's been telling me she was at business conferences, telling her work she was taking personal time, and telling her friends she was working late. Also, she could spend time with Mr. Voss here." Marcia Peterson practically fell off her bar stool. "Celeste! How could you?" "It's not what it looks like," Celeste said desperately. "Oliver, we can work this out. We can go to counseling." "Actually, we can't." I pulled out a manila envelope. "These are divorce papers. You've been served. And before you start planning your financial strategy, you should know that adultery affects asset division in Connecticut, especially when it's this well documented." Damien tried to salvage the situation. "Look, everyone makes mistakes. This doesn't have to ruin anyone's life." "You're right," I said. "It doesn't have to ruin my life. Or anyone else's except yours and Celeste's." I turned to address the room again. "Oh, and one more thing. Mr. Voss here is married to a lovely woman named Sarah who thinks he's been attending business conferences this week. I'm sure she'd be interested to know how he's really been spending his time." The color drained from Damien's face. "You wouldn't." "I already did. Sent her the video about an hour ago, along with some financial records showing how you've been using your company credit card to pay for hotel rooms." Celeste sank onto a bar stool, finally understanding the scope of what was happening. "Oliver, please. Think about Maddie. Think about our family." "I did think about our family. That's why I'm doing this." I picked up my jacket. "You two deserve each other. Enjoy your future together." As I walked toward the door, I could hear Celeste sobbing and Damien trying to explain to someone on his phone, probably his wife, that there had been a misunderstanding. Pete caught up with me in the parking lot. "Jesus, Ollie. That was brutal." "That was justice," I corrected. "The brutal part comes next." "What do you mean?" I smiled and got into my truck. "Wait until they find out about the HR investigation and the lease violations. This was just the opening act." Saturday morning brought 3 phone calls that confirmed my plan was working perfectly. The first was from Tom Bradley at Damien's apartment complex. "Ollie, you're not going to believe this. Voss showed up here at 6 a.m. with a moving truck, trying to clear out his apartment before management could serve him with eviction papers. Problem is, we'd already changed the locks. What about his stuff? Building policy says we have to hold it for 30 days, but he's responsible for storage fees." Guy looked like he hadn't slept all night. The second call was from Jennifer Walsh at Pinnacle Communications. "Mr. Harlan, I wanted to thank you for bringing this situation to our attention. After reviewing the evidence you provided along with our own investigation, we've made some personnel decisions that I think will interest you." "I'm listening." "Both Mrs. Harlan and Mr. Voss have been terminated for violation of company policies regarding professional conduct and falsification of time-off requests. Their final paychecks will reflect the personal time they took under false pretenses." "That seems appropriate." "There's one more thing. Mr. Voss had been under consideration for promotion to executive vice president. That promotion came with a significant signing bonus and stock options. Obviously, those are no longer available to him. I thanked Jennifer and made a note in my file. Damien had just lost his job, his apartment, and a promotion worth probably $200,000. The third call was from Pete. "You need to get down here," he said. "Celeste showed up about an hour ago, and she's been drinking steadily ever since. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you destroyed her life." "Is she causing problems?" "Not exactly problems, but she's making a scene. Crying, talking about how she made a mistake, how she wants to work things out. It's actually pretty pathetic." I drove to Pete's Tavern and found Celeste at the same bar stool where she'd been sitting the night before. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her expensive business attire wrinkled. She looked like she'd been wearing the same clothes for 24 hours. "Oliver!" She spun around when she saw me, nearly falling off the stool. "I've been waiting for you." "What do you want, Celeste?" "I want to fix this. I want to fix us." She grabbed my arm with both hands. "It was a mistake, Oliver. A stupid, terrible mistake. Damien means nothing to me." "Really?" "Because the video evidence suggests otherwise. That was just physical. It didn't mean anything. You're my husband. You're the father of my daughter. We can work through this." I looked at her for a long moment. Even drunk and desperate, she was still beautiful. For just a second, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 18 years ago. Then I remembered the months of lies, the secret phone, the video of her with another man. "No," I said simply. "We can't. Please, Oliver." I lost my job. Damien won't return my calls. I don't have anywhere to go. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy our marriage. Celeste started crying again. "I know I hurt you. I know I messed up, but 18 years has to count for something." It did count for something. It counted for enough that I'm not pressing charges for identity theft and credit card fraud. Her head snapped up. "What?" "The hotel rooms you booked with our joint credit card. The spa weekends you charged to my account. The restaurant bills for two when you told me you were working late. That's fraud, Celeste. I could have you arrested." "You wouldn't. Try me." I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm again. "What about Maddie? What am I supposed to tell our daughter? Tell her the truth. That you chose to have an affair instead of working on your marriage. That you lied to everyone who cared about you. That actions have consequences. She'll hate me." "Maybe, but that's between you and her." I walked out of the bar and drove home to the house that was now mine alone. The divorce papers were already filed. The evidence was overwhelming, and Celeste had no grounds for contesting anything. But I wasn't finished yet. That evening, I called Sarah Voss. Damien's wife answered on the second ring, and her voice was steady despite everything she'd learned in the past 24 hours. "Mrs. Voss, this is Oliver Harlan. I wanted to apologize for the way you found out about your husband's affair. You deserved better than a video sent by a stranger. Actually, Mr. Harlan, I'm grateful you told me. I've suspected something was wrong for months, but I couldn't prove it. What will you do now?" "I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer says the evidence you provided will make the proceedings very straightforward. Damien won't get a penny of my inheritance. I'm sorry you're going through this. Don't be. You did me a favor. I just wish I'd figured it out sooner." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of scotch and sat in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my marriage. Tomorrow, I would start the process of rebuilding my life. I would call Maddie and explain what had happened. I would focus on my renovation business and maybe even expand it. But tonight, I was going to savor the satisfaction of a job well done. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." I recognized Damien's writing style from the messages I'd seen on Celeste's phone. I typed back, "I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what was already broken." No response. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Whatever happened to Damien and Celeste from this point forward was their problem, not mine. I'd given them exactly what they deserved. Each other, with nowhere else to hide. 3 weeks later, I was putting the finishing touches on the Henderson kitchen renovation when Pete called with news that made me smile. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Celeste and Damien showed up at the bar together last night." "Together?" "Yeah, apparently they're a couple now. Official and everything. Problem is, nobody wants anything to do with either of them. They sat in the corner booth for 2 hours, and not a single person talked to them except to order drinks." "How did they look?" "Like hell. Damien's been staying at that cheap motel out by the highway since he got evicted. Celeste is living with her sister, but word is that's not going well either. Kendra won't even take her calls anymore. I finished installing the cabinet hardware and stepped back to admire my work. The Henderson kitchen had been a disaster when I started. Outdated appliances, warped cabinets, peeling linoleum. Now it was beautiful, functional, and built to last. "What about jobs?" I asked. "That's the best part." Damien applied for a position at Morrison Tech, but when they called Pinnacle for references, Jennifer Walsh told them about the termination. Word gets around in the corporate world, you know? And Celeste tried to get a job with that PR firm downtown, but they'd already heard about her situation. "Small town," I said. "Exactly. Everyone knows everyone else's business. And right now, their business is toxic." That afternoon, I drove through downtown to pick up supplies for my next project. As I passed the coffee shop where Celeste used to meet her clients, I saw her sitting alone at a corner table, staring at her laptop screen with the desperate expression of someone applying for jobs online. She looked older than she had 3 weeks ago. The stress was showing in the lines around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders, the careful way she was making a single cup of coffee last for hours. I felt a brief moment of something that might have been pity. Then I remembered the months of lies, the secret phone, the video of her laughing with Damien about how naive her husband was. The pity disappeared. That evening, I called Maddie at college. Our daughter had taken the news about the divorce better than I'd expected, probably because she'd sensed the tension between Celeste and me during her last visit home. "How are you doing, Dad?" "Better than I expected. The house feels different, but not necessarily bad different." "And Mom?" "Your mother is learning that choices have consequences. She'll figure out her next steps. She called me yesterday, crying about how you ruined her life." I set down my beer and chose my words carefully. "Maddie, I need you to understand something. I didn't ruin your mother's life. She made a series of decisions that led to where she is now. I just made sure those decisions had appropriate consequences." "I know, Dad. I'm not stupid. I figured out months ago that something was wrong. Mom was always working late or traveling for business, but she never seemed stressed about work stuff. She seemed excited. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry you did too. But I'm proud of you for not just rolling over and taking it." After we hung up, I sat on my back deck and watched the sunset over the neighborhood where I'd lived for 18 years. Tomorrow, the Hendersons would see their finished kitchen for the first time. Next week, I had 3 new renovation projects starting. Next month, I was thinking about buying a bigger truck and maybe hiring an assistant. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. "Town festival next weekend. You planning to come?" The annual summer festival was a big deal in our small town. Local businesses set up booths, there was live music, and everyone came out to see and be seen. It was exactly the kind of event where Celeste would normally network and schmooze, back when she had a career worth networking for. I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." The festival was held in the town square, with booths arranged around the gazebo and a small stage for the live music. I arrived early and helped Pete set up his beer garden, then walked around to see who was there. The crowd was the usual mix of families, teenagers, and adults looking for an excuse to drink beer in the afternoon. I recognized most of the faces. This was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else, at least by sight. I was talking to Tom Bradley about a potential bathroom renovation when I saw them. Celeste and Damien were standing near the gazebo, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Celeste wore a sundress that had probably cost more than most people spent on their entire festival wardrobe, but it couldn't hide the fact that she looked tired and stressed. Damien wore khakis and a polo shirt, trying too hard to look casual and approachable. They were together, but they weren't happy about it. I could see the tension in their body language, the way they stood just a little too far apart, the forced smiles when they thought people were watching. "Well, look who decided to show up," Tom said, following my gaze. Word spread quickly through the festival crowd. Within minutes, I could see people pointing and whispering. Celeste noticed the attention and tried to steer Damien toward a less crowded area, but there really wasn't anywhere to hide in the town square. I watched from a distance as they approached various groups of people, trying to make conversation, only to be met with polite but cold responses. Former friends turned away. Business associates found excuses to leave. Even casual acquaintances seemed uncomfortable talking to them. "Brutal," Pete said, appearing at my elbow with 2 beers. "They're getting the full social exile treatment. They earned it." We watched as Celeste and Damien finally gave up trying to mingle and retreated to a bench near the edge of the square. They sat in silence, surrounded by a festival full of people who wanted nothing to do with them. "You know what the worst part is?" Pete asked. "What?" "They're stuck with each other now. Nobody else will have them, so they're trapped in a relationship that started with lies and betrayal. That's not exactly a solid foundation for lasting love." I raised my beer in a mock toast. "Here's to getting exactly what you deserve." As the afternoon wore on, I found myself genuinely enjoying the festival. I talked to potential clients, caught up with old friends, and even flirted a little with Sarah Chen, the attractive widow who ran the bookstore downtown. Life was good. Around sunset, as the crowd was starting to thin out, Celeste approached me. She'd been drinking. I could smell the wine on her breath, and her carefully composed facade was starting to crack. "Oliver, can we talk?" "We're talking now." "Privately." I glanced around the square. People were watching us, waiting to see what would happen. "I think this is private enough. Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I followed her to a relatively quiet spot near the edge of the festival. "This has to stop," she said. "The social ostracism, the professional blacklisting, all of it. You've made your point." "Have I?" "Yes. I lost my job, my friends, my reputation. Damien lost everything too. We're both paying for what we did. Isn't that enough?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Do you remember our 10th anniversary?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Our 10th anniversary. We went to that little inn in Vermont. You said you'd never been happier. You said you couldn't imagine being with anyone else." "Oliver, were you lying then, or did you just decide later that our marriage wasn't worth keeping?" Tears started running down her cheeks. "I wasn't lying. I meant it when I said it." "Then what happened?" "I don't know. I got bored, I got restless, I got stupid. Damien paid attention to me, made me feel attractive and interesting. It was exciting and new, and I didn't think about the consequences." "And now?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Now I know the consequences. Now I understand what I threw away. But it's too late, isn't it?" "Yes," I said simply. "It's too late." "So what happens now? Do you just keep destroying us forever?" "I'm not destroying anything anymore, Celeste. I'm just letting you live with the choices you made. If you don't like the consequences, you should have made different choices." I walked away from her and rejoined the festival. When I looked back a few minutes later, she was sitting alone on the bench, crying quietly while Damien stood nearby, looking helpless and angry. They deserved each other, and they deserved everything that had happened to them. But more importantly, I deserved better than both of them. As the festival wound down and people started heading home, I helped Pete clean up the beer garden. The work was satisfying, the kind of simple physical labor that cleared your head and reminded you what really mattered. "You feel better?" Pete asked, as we loaded the last of the tables into his truck. "I feel free," I said. "For the first time in months, I feel completely free." I drove home to my empty house, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. It felt like a place where I could build something new, something better than what I'd had before. Celeste and Damien could have each other. They could figure out how to build a life together based on lies and betrayal. They could deal with the consequences of their choices every single day for the rest of their lives. I had better things to do. I poured myself a glass of the good scotch and sat on my back deck, watching the stars come out over the neighborhood where I'd lived for 18 years. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new possibilities, new chances to build something worthwhile. But tonight, I was content to sit in the silence and enjoy the perfect satisfaction of a job well done. I'd given them exactly what they deserved, and I'd taken back exactly what was mine: my life, my self-respect, and my future. Sure, 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 sure.